Nolan and I have known each other for a few years now, and I've had the chance to interview him a couple times. So there'll be a couple here that are tee-ups that come over the plate, and you know how to hit those. I've also got a few in here that are new, and I don't know where they're going to go. So
as long as they're not gotchas.
No. There might be gotchas for me, but all right. So the first one is a nice setup here. You've had a life and a career. You've had a huge life and a career worth celebrating. What is it about your approach that allowed you to accomplish so much?
Unknown. No, it's a thing where I love to figure out things that haven't been previously figured out. It's kind of like some people are really focused on puzzles, and they like solving the puzzles. I've always liked strategy games, Go, and chess. And I'm kind of addicted to 2 or 3 games on the iPhone. Business is a lot like that. Like the minute I do a spreadsheet with and I have 3 tests. 1, can it potentially be a $1 billion company? Because, if you're there's a lot of companies that have headroom of maybe 20 million, 10 million, 40 million. That's not a big enough win based on all the risk. So, first test, can it become a $1 billion business? Second test, does it require skills that you have? And so that sort of chops things up. Like, if I had an idea about medical devices, should I do it? I don't know. I don't know anything about medical devices. So I'm clearly the wrong person. So, do you have skills? Third, can it be funded by what you have in your wallet? Most things fail there. So then you say, okay, how does it fail, Nolan? You've made a lot of money. What people don't realize, I've also lost a lot of money. I mean, trust me.
We've got some questions around that. So.
But, I turned down 1/3 of Apple Computer for $50,000. How do you escape from that? Steve Jobs and Wozniak worked for me. And when they decided to start Apple, they asked me for the first investment. I liked Steve a lot. As a CEO, not so much. But anyway, that's another story.
Well, this feeds into the second question really well, which is what role does randomness play in your career and in the video game industry?
Massively. I really look at my life as being a series of happy accidents. Happy accident 1. I put myself through college working at an amusement park. So I knew the economics of the arcade business. I ended up being pretty good at it. But did I start my thing at the amusement park to get that skill set? No. I was making a lot of money with the campus company. I had an advertising company that was doing the campus water. But I knew, so I have very, very weak personal skill sets about avoiding excess. And I can tell you that left on my own, I would spend way too much money having fun. And so to keep myself away from that, I found that the best thing to do is to make big decisions that force me to mediate my bad decisions. So if I had a nighttime job at the amusement park, that would work. You know? So that was the reason. Wrong reason, right result. Second, I went to school for engineering at the University of Utah. Dr. Evans had this thing about hooking video screens up to big computers. 1966, 3 places in the world. MIT, Stanford University, University of Utah, which doesn't belong.
Stanford.
So all of a sudden, I saw a space war really very close to its onset. Yeah, that was a happy accident. When I graduated, I went to work for Ampex. Why? Because they offered me the most money. Turns out that they were in video files, so I sharpened my skills on video technology and MOS technology and TTL technology. Why? Because they offered me the most money. So that was another happy accident. And then there was a publication that came across my desk that showed me a computer that was very, very cheap. And I thought, I know the economics of the coin-op business from the amusement park. I knew that if I put space more with a coin slot, that we'd make money. The problem was, if you charged a quarter for 3 minutes and $1 million computer, the math wouldn't work. But all of a sudden, it was a cheap computer that came along. So I said, can I do that? That started me down the process. And I found out even a $3,000 computer was too damn slow. But to start out, I started making these little circuits that would unload what the computer had to do. Thanksgiving weekend, 1969, I said, I'm going to solve this problem. Wednesday night, I said, this is going to fail. I can't do it. Next morning, I had an epiphany. Epiphany was, get rid of the computer, let's do it all in hardware. By Sunday night of that weekend, I had a full outline of how to do a video game using TTL circuits and hardware, and I never looked back. Happy accidents all.
So Atari was formed in California. You raised a family here, and you still live and work here. What is it about California that has stuck with you all of these years?
The rule is that everything that is a little bit loose, the nation was tipped And everything that was a little bit loose fell to California. And I believe that the first step in anything is belief that it can be happening. When you're a little bit nuts, that's a large catchment. And I think that we have more nutty people in California than anywhere else in the world.
Florida might give you a run for its
And I think that's a good thing. Like, I really believe that science fiction is a way to lubricate your brain, not into the world that is, but the world that might be, or that the world can be. And I believe that innovation is about belief in that eventuality of uniqueness and something better. And I think that I like this quote by Alan Kay, who said, "The best way to live in the future is to invent it."
You share the love of science fiction is something that I've noticed with a lot of founders and CEOs and titans of the tech industry. What do you think? What is it about science fiction that oftentimes leads people into a place of invention?
Well, that's simple. In science fiction, the future can be invented long before the technology supports it. And so, if you really want to see, now let's imagine we have time travel, and you say to yourself, I want to figure out what's happening. If I can see the future of what the stock market is, I can make a lot of money. Good. If I see the inventions in the future, maybe I can invent them first and make a lot of money. Let's assume we want to make a lot of money. Well, that's what science fiction does. A lot of the inventions in the future have already been done in science fiction. They just haven't actualized it. What if a science fiction author could gain a patent? Wrong. It's got to be a little bit closer to reality. But at the same time, reading science fiction, you get all that stuff for free. And a lot of dross too, so you have to be a little selective. But I think it gives you the right mindset.
You're a father of 8. And this is one for Brent, too. Brent, feel free to come up and answer this as well. But what was it like growing up in the Nolan household?
I had a terrible childhood.
Why don't you take my seat?
Microphone problems. We had better audio back then. I gotta say, he built my folks built a magical wonderland. We had tools in the basement, and these like blank spaces. There was this room above the garage. It was just an empty room, and there was a trap door in one of the closets that went down a ladder into a little tiny brick room. And both of those were just unfinished rooms that you just had there for us.
I want to invent the childhood that I dreamed of. And it led to some weird stuff. See, I knew that when we built on that this space down below there was no way to have a normal thing. So a ladder down, and I said, that is going to be a sacred place because you want to have space that parents don't want to go to.
And literally, you imagine, you open a closet and the floor of the closet lifted up as a trap door, and then you went down a little ladder, and there was this cinder block room that was just a tiny cinder block room that was like 50 square feet, you know? And we turned that into 100 different things over the years, you know? And it ultimately was the most badass Dungeons and Dragons room that we would literally go in there at like 8 p.m. and we'd tell everybody else that we were going to party, but we were nerds, so we were just going to play Dungeons and Dragons all night. And we would be there until dawn or later, you know?
And where they found these snake sconces
Yeah.
with the candle and everything.
The fact that we never lit the place on fire is amazing.
Well, you know, my wife said, they're going to fixate themselves down there. And I said, no, they'll be okay. And nobody did.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about any other siblings. But no, really, all the tools, you know, and this sort of encouragement for entrepreneurship. You know,
Well, it's more than that. See, my belief is that a father's goal or responsibility is to be the primary educator of his children about life and about skills.
I remember you used to always say, you could do whatever you want, but you're going to be the happiest if you're an entrepreneur. But yeah, I got to say, you know,
But more than that, it's about a rich environment. Like, I'd let the kids, I had a metal shop, wood shop, and I let the kids in there, but they couldn't use anything that would cut their fingers off. That was kind of my rule. But
hot glue guns.
hot glue guns, well, the notcher where you guys made ninja
We
stars.
could make our own ninja stars. That was very accomplished. You know, as a you know elementary school kid, that feels like a superpower. Your own ninja stars. You know.
You know, but anyway, we had a lot of fun. And we lived so that we were adjacent to probably, 16 acres? No, 1,600 acres of redwood forest. And that was a magical playground on a lot of ways.
They really had us doing a lot of projects. I remember all the time, a lot of projects. And you know, we sold mistletoe in front of the grocery store and our own jewelry in front of a different place. Like, you know, we didn't have a lemonade stand. It was like a full-blown 7-Eleven because we were buying stuff from Costco and all this stuff. We had all these things built out. And it really, you know, I learned a lot from that stuff. Like, and I did only in thinking back was all of those sales experience. I mean, I was terrible at baseball, but we sell candy bars for our baseball team. And you were like, okay, well, what's your pitch? And you know, so I was like, well, I've got these candy bars and I'm selling them. He's like, no. There's, you know, look at that. There's a discount for Domino's on the back. So you're going to walk up and you're going to say, you know, there's this discount for Domino's and it's for this thing. And, you know, what's your elevator pitch? And then finally, you were like, and if they give you $5, give them 5 candy bars back. I was like, got it. All right, thanks.
And he won. I mean,
Not the game. I was still terrible at baseball, but I did sell a lot of candy bars.
Anything else?
That's it. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm jealous. That is. That's a tough childhood to top. Also, just I'm sure the sheer amount of video games, but also games in general in that house must have been continuous.
Oh, I got a funny story on that one. I brought back a game from Japan. and it had software, and I had to mess around. I had to change the frequency so that it could actually work on regular television and everything. But they had one game that was so non-American to be like, but it was a game where you had these people after you, or these critters or what have you. But the only way you could defeat them was to pee on them. Or take a dump and throw it at them. Now, that would have never passed American censors. But my boys thought it was the coolest thing ever.
They're like 12.
You've described the 90s to me as the decade of woe. Why was that?
I had done some really smart things in my life. I'd also done some really, really dumb things in my life. And one of the things I did is I borrowed a whole bunch of money for a company called Amphibot. And it was going to be paid back through an IPO with Merrill Lynch. And it didn't happen. And so I ended up owing Merrill Lynch a whole bunch of money that I couldn't pay back. So I like to say I've lost probably more money than anybody ever. But the good news is that I almost made that much, but not quite enough. And that was a summer ago.
You've also told me that didn't make that much of a difference to your happiness. How do you feel that was?
You know, I don't know. I can tell you it made a lot of difference to my wife's happiness. But I feel like most of my happiness has been derived by projects. Like, I mean, you know, it was never a matter, well, it might have been close, but we weren't ever going to be living under, you know, overpass, maybe. But at the same time, once you have projects and skills, you're never broke, really. And I think that I always had friends and resources and family. And I think that family is really, really important. Like, Nancy and I were probably as different of people as possibly could have. But we're a team, and I think that we're kind of invincible. Nobody's going to really mess with us too much. You know, the last thing you want in life is to have Nancy's thumb in your eye.
That's a tough transition. Okay. So there's a lot of debate around what caused the video game crash of 1983. What do you think led to the video game crash of 1983?
Ray Kassar was a shithead.
That's the CEO of Atari at the time, just for...
It had absolutely nothing to do with homicide. It was totally suicide. And they tried to push another 1.5 million units of Atari 2600 into a saturated market. The software that went along with it. 1983, unit volumes actually went up. Unit prices dropped by an order of magnitude. Biggest failure, the biggest loss of any page in Sears Roebuck catalog for 100 years. was the Atari page in that year. And it was so predictable to me. It was really the reason I left Atari, because I said, you're not just in the record business, you're in the record player business as well. And the day that we launched the 2600, it was obsolete. The Atari 2600 had 128 bytes of memory. Not kilobytes, bytes. That's bad. The day we launched it, the cost of memory had dropped by 2 and maybe even 3 orders of magnitude. And in those days, RAM memory was the difference between having the Atari 2600 had quarter-inch pixels, not because we thought quarter-inch pixels were cool. It was the best we could do. More memory could have allowed us to have 4 years before the Nintendo Famicom the same resolution and capability that it had. But we could have had that in 1979, 70, or 80. Nintendo's Famicom didn't come around until 76. So, no, 86.
Right? Yeah.
So, self-inflicted by technical stupid people. Shitheads.
I'm supposed to wrangle Nolan, so you can blame me for that one. That's on me. Well, are there any parallels here? I'm going to tee this one up as well. Are there any parallels that you see between that crash and the recession the video game industry is in today?
Very different. Well, a little bit similar in that there is right now an excessive supply. There's a lot more supply than there is demand, and there's also a failure of a lot of the economic systems around it. And, there's a lot of free-to-play, pay to win, pay to get rid of grinding. But I think that right now you can't talk about the game business. It's the game businesses. And the iPhone, Android market is very, very different than the Xbox, PlayStation, Steam market. Very, very different. And then on top of that, there is sort of a resurgence of kind of coin-op light and kind of nostalgia historical game. And I think that wending through that with the right economic model has become very complex and almost not understandable. I mean, you wake up every morning trying to figure out how you're going to monetize some of the cool shit you're doing.
Yeah. And it fails a lot. It fails.
Because it's very, very random. And then you have social media and all of the influencers, some of which can't influence. They've got people who watch them, but nobody believes them, And so there's this numbers versus quality problem that you're trying to deconstruct all the time. I just hope that artificial intelligence is going to be a way to tell me what the hell to do.
Oh man, I don't even know how to move on that because AI it's a hot button topic in our industry. I think people they worry about AI taking away jobs. I think there's also a worry of AI. There's an oversaturation of supply. And I think people worry that AI might increase that supply even further. You sound optimistic. What do you hope AI opens up in the video game industry?
I believe that every time you try to save jobs, you fail. And every time you want to automate and eliminate jobs, you create better life. Ned Ludd was a weaver. The year was 1805. Ned Ludd got laid off because of the Jacquard loom, steam-powered loom. He and his buddies were unhappy about that. So they got pickaxes, sledgehammers, and went in and they destroyed the loom. Thus started the Luddite movement. I'm quick to call people Luddites when they don't embrace technology. But history says that there were more British soldiers fighting the Luddites in 1840 than fighting Napoleon, who was rampaging through Europe. Other side of the world, India outlawed the steam-powered loom, which saved the weavers' jobs, but condemned them to be essentially serfs with low-paying jobs because they had to compete with the efficiency of the steam-powered loom in England. Were those people's jobs that forced them into serfhood better than the people who were displaced in England, who went across and built the English railroad system? People are people. And to say that you're displaced when you 20% of single women in the 1930s and 40s were telephone operators. Does anybody know a telephone operator now? Is the world worse off because we don't have 20% of our female population answering telephones? Don't think so. So we have AI. Would I be unhappy if I could have a customer service representative that's AI, responsive and capable, answering my phone in 15 seconds instead of 2 hours and 47? Yeah, I would. Is that going to cause somebody in India to be without a job? Probably. But what we really want to do is have deflation in our cost of goods so that you can make the same amount of money and live like a millionaire. That's a good idea, isn't it? And the only way you're going to do that is through automation, AI capabilities. And so, yes, are there going to be dislocations? Absolutely. Do I care about it? Not a bit.
Great. Well, not great to discuss that. I'm going to segue to a fun one off of that, which is, so I get to hear a lot of stories about Nolan. When I'm out and about, I meet people who've all met Nolan, and they all have a story to tell me, and they're oftentimes ones I haven't heard before. But I think my favorite is I met somebody who said he was at a convention a decade or two ago, and Nolan had come there, and he was giving a talk in which he said that he claimed that you would go to conventions, random conventions. You get on a plane, fly to a place, and just show up at a convention center and spend time at a convention that you knew nothing about, just what for whatever industry, buttons or zippers or something random like that. What was the motivation behind it? What were you hoping to accomplish, and is that true? I guess, is that true, and what is the motivation behind that? I assume it's true.
It is true. I felt that life by its nature tends to silo yourself. You live in your own silo. And that I feel like to have a full life and full understanding, you need to understand things that are not in your silo. And there's actually, there was a book I read, and I'm trying to think about it, what the name of it was, and I can't think about it right now, but it was basically about a person who lived a totally random life. And he would throw dice to make decisions, and he had a very interesting life, totally based on random decisions. I kind of like that. And so, what would the convention thing that I would do would be primarily in Las Vegas, because they've always got the conventions going in a hotel or down in the convention center or what have you. And a lot of times I'd be going for a convention here and in the North Hall, but in the South Hall, there'd be something totally different. And I just, I should tell you this about me, but I had a whole series of cards that I'd made up using Photoshop that put me as a reporter to the New York Times. And you could always get into any trade show in the hall pass as a reporter. So I could get in for free. Was that nice? Was that right? Probably not, but it worked. Anyway, and I would find a trade show for a particular industry. It's like a snapshot of what that company, what those companies were all about. And there'd be sort of a center of gravity, and you'd learn about it. And the various companies would teach you things about stuff that you had no feeling about. And for example, I ended up at a factory automation conference, and every other booth had something going on with pneumatics. I had absolutely no understanding of pneumatics when I went there. 3.5 hours later, I knew a lot about pneumatics. And the thing that really stuck in my mind is, I'd say, how long does this piston last? And the guy says, I don't know, they've never worn out. I thought to myself, so that's how I'm going to drive my animals in Chuck E. Cheese. Because a restaurant is really a crappy environment for technology. Pneumatics solved that problem. It didn't work. They didn't break. They didn't get jammed. They weren't nasty. If they leaked, it was leaking air. Who cared? And so I just think that randomness and knowledge about things that are not in your echo chamber, not in your silo, is an important way to change your understanding. I feel like every conference, every trade show that I went to was valuable except for one. I happened to wander into a carpet convention one time. And the hot topic was cut tile versus loop. I didn't care then, I don't care now.
You mentioned Chucky. You want to tell, where did the inspiration for Chucky come from? And what was the origin in getting it to market? What was it like to get it to market? From inception to all the parts? And I know that's a big open-ended question, but...
Well, I was selling coin-operated video games for between $1,500 and $2,000 a piece. In their lifetime, they earned between $30,000 and $50,000 in coin drop. Said to myself, I'm on the wrong end of this equation. So I said, what I need to do is vertically integrate towards my market without affecting my customers. So my customers were the guys that were putting games into bars and restaurants and bowling alleys and what have you. So I said, I have to create my own location. So, why? How? And I thought to myself, okay, I need a big arcade. Great. Do I need to serve food? Maybe. What kind of food if I did serve food? Well, pizza, because there's a wait time. That's a great time for gameplay. What's the most successful pizza parlor in my area? It was a place called Pizza and Pipes that had a deconstructed Wurlitzer theater organ that is, you know, the cymbals and the pipes and the trumpets and everything were all around the walls. The place was packed when there was organists there. I said, okay, I'm not going to have to find a theater organ nor somebody to play it. I need something else. Happened to go to Disney, saw the tiki room, thought to myself, yeah, my guys can do that. So, and I said, but, you know, instead of birds and hyenas and what have you, we'll just have some characters run by pneumatics. And so I decided that I was going to do a pizza restaurant with a game center that when you bought a pizza, you'd get free tokens to get you started with the gameplay, what have you. And our pricing mechanism was really very simple. We would survey the area, find out the average price for a 15-inch pizza. We would up that by 20%, but give enough tokens that if you valued them at 25 cents, it looked like we were 20% less. Worked like a charm. The code name was Coyote Pizza. I knew my guys could make things move. I knew they could make them run on a computer. We had no sculpture. So I bought a walk-around costume from an amusement park show. Had it shipped to California. Bought a coyote costume. Called up the engineer and said, "Have you got the coyote costume?" He said, "No. But we did get a rat costume." I said, "How do you know?" He says, "Well, it's got a big pink tail." Now, in caricatures, you sort of see through your eyes and your brain. And sure enough, the minute you think it's a coyote, all you can see is a coyote. The minute they say it's a rat, all you can see is a rat. So we had a problem. Could I delay the problem? No, that's not my style. So I said, okay, Rick Rat's Pizza, done. Marketing department says, no. You're serving food. Rats are dirty. I said, well, you know, mice are dirty, but Disney kind of gets away with it. And they said, well, I don't know. I said, okay, we're going to use a rat. If we de-emphasize his ratness. They said, I don't know, let's think about it. This is my marketing department. Pretty smart guys. Week later, he came back and said, we've got a perfect name. I says, do you de-emphasize the ratness? Absolutely. We've got a 3-smile name for you. I said, what's that? They said, Chuck E. Cheese. You can't say it without smiling 3 times. I said, done. The rest is history.
What's the motivation behind Exodexa?
Well,
Or origin story? I mean,
well,
you know,
no. Here,
kind of did Chucky. I want to make sure we.
I've been playing around with this for a while, and I realized
maybe could you start by just talking a little bit about the mission? And
well, there's a mission. There's the old epitaph. You know, do I want my epitaph to say he gave a lot of people fun and pizza and games, or do I want to say he changed the world of education? What's better?
well, I'm thinking games, but
So, no, it's a thing where I discovered early on that games were highly, highly educational, and that there was some dynamics, without getting too fluffy duffy. There's this thing called flow state. Like in a video game, you can sit down to play, and an hour and a half later, you come up for air and you think you've been doing for 10 minutes and you've been there for 2 hours. It's a flow state, and it's probably the most powerful conscious state that you have for learning. And I felt that if we could harness the things in games that put you into flow state, that we could fundamentally change the nature of education. And so that's been kind of the path. And Leah and I wrote this book, Shaping the Future Education. And I want you all to go out and buy 5 or 6 copies. They're really good for breakfast, and you can give them to friends. It's kind of a manifesto. See, one of the things that I started at Atari is I said, you cannot complain about something. You cannot point out what's wrong with something unless you have a solution. Solutions are valued. Bitching about something have no value. Not acceptable. So I really think that education is broken in a lot of ways. I mean, it was invented a long time ago. It hasn't changed. It's probably the worst use of computer technology of any industry around. It's just really broken. And I can't say that out loud without having a solution. And I've got Leah and I created the solution. Leah, put your hand up. You've got to understand, when it comes to education, Leah's much smarter than I am. When it comes to games, I'm smarter than Leah is. Together, I think we made a cocktail of wonderful things. So you've got to buy the book, give them to friends, eat them for breakfast, not the friends, the book, and be part of this thing to fix the world. As if you can fix education, you fix everything.
Have you ever thought about a Nolan Bushnell autobiography? And if so, what form would it take?
You know, I should give you, I've actually done some work on it, but there's so many things that are not resonant that I'm not sure about. Writing an autobiography, for me, would be kind of easy. Getting it past Nancy would be really hard.
Well, have you ever thought about it taking an interactive form? A game, or even a different medium, graphic novel? Or, I mean, you mentioned writing a book, but given all the other mediums you work in, is there any desire to do that in a different medium?
How many of you here read my first book, Finding the Next Steve Jobs? Anybody? Well, you know, it's actually a very weird book. and it represents kind of my thoughts about how you construct a company that is open to innovation and creativity. And I used it because I was the only guy that ever gave Steve Jobs a job. And yet, I think Steve represented a very, very unique, like, I think in a lot of ways, both Steve and I are unemployable.
Definitely.
Yeah. And
Me too.
And I think that I'd be willing to bet that half the people in this audience are unemployed. That's a good thing.
Wildcats. Do one more, and I just want to personally thank you, Nolan, for everything you've done and the legacy that you've provided to us. But
On a lot of our calls, try one more time here. Nope. Okay.
on a lot of our calls, the Atari team members, when they get on, they'll oftentimes see a soldering iron or something close by that looks like it was recently used. You're always in your workbench. You're always in your office. What are you working on in there? We are so curious.
What are you building, and is it anything that we can expect to see out in the world someday?
Well, you know it. If I tell you the answer to that, I'm going to have to kill you. No, it's not quite that bad. I have this is going to come across as attention deficit disorder run amok. I've got 3 or 4 projects, and I'll list them. Many years ago, I tried to analyze the difference between my successes and my failures. And it turned out that my successes all had a similar characteristic. Right time, right place, right people. My failures all had the same characteristic. Wrong time, wrong place, wrong people. So I said, how do you separate? How do you know when you have the right time and the right place and the right people? Right people can be fixed a little bit by what I call the no-hassle rule. just don't surround yourself with people. And you know, as you get older, you get so you can tell the difference between good people and bad people. You just can't. Second, if you only have one idea, there's only one time. It's now. So I decided that the best thing to do was to have multiple ideas, create micro business plans, and then put them on the shelf to marinate. Then let the world talk to you about pulling one of those down because it's the right time, or the right place, or maybe the right team, or the right person. So, right now, I have 3 projects that seem like they're the right time, the right place, and the right people. And one is Exodexa, which is the educational SaaS, software as a service, educational platform. And I think that the team that we've assembled are extraordinary. And not a single asshole that I've been able to identify. And I've got a good team, and I think that it has a really high probability of being able to change things. The other project that I have that I like is the Atari Labs. And the Atari Labs project is, arcades went away when the games at home were equivalent to the games you could play at the arcade. Fast forward 30 years, and I believe that there's a whole class of games, some of which are out and about, that you really can't play at home. Plus, I have a whole bunch that are new games, some of which are what I call trinkets, that I think I can bring an arcade back to the malls in America. Since COVID, there are over 200 malls where you get percentage rent, which totally de-links and de-risks the other start. The economics that I have is it looks like each of these should be able to be spun up for about $200,000. Should be able to do $1 million to $1.5 million in revenue, EBITDA of $500,000 to $750,000. So, and the thing I like about that is if you can do $500,000 of EBITDA and there are 200 locations, that's $100 million in EBITDA, which should give me a $2 billion market cap, which achieves one of my bucket list goals. Is I've created several billion-dollar companies, but I've never been there when they achieved that. And I feel like I should before I kick off this new cool.
Well, Nolan, you'd be happy to know the no assholes rule is still alive and well in Atari, and it is a very real rule that we
Absolutely has to be.
it's the number one thing we're under. No assholes. Well, thank you, Nolan. I appreciate you greatly, and thank you, everyone, for being here.